How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People by Les Giblin. Picture this. A man is sharing something deeply personal with a woman. He's pouring his heart out, but her attention starts to wander. Her eyes glaze over. She drifts away. Eventually, she falls asleep. His response? He strangles her. This isn't fiction from some twisted thriller. This actually happened. And on that very same day, another disturbing story broke. A 17-year-old kid held up a gas station. When police caught him, he admitted something surprising. He didn't even want the money. His whole life, kids had mocked him for his buck teeth, and he just wanted to prove he was tough enough, man enough, to pull off a robbery. Two horrifying stories that seem completely unrelated. But here's the thing. They're about exactly the same force. They're both about a wounded ego. Hidden inside each of us is a force more powerful than hunger, more commanding than fear, even more driving than love. It's the deep, aching, universal human craving to feel important, to be seen, to matter. When this need is satisfied, we're capable of breathtaking kindness, courage, and sacrifice. But when it's threatened or ignored, when someone tramples on our dignity, it can trigger devastation. This is the explosive truth at the core of every human interaction. And one man spent decades mastering this principle, not in some ivory tower, but in the trenches of real-world business, sales, and daily life. His name was Les Giblin. He wasn't an academic with fancy credentials. He was a practitioner, a teacher who shared his devastatingly effective methods with thousands of people in his training sessions. His compact little book, How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People, first hit shelves back in 1956 and has quietly become a cult classic for one simple reason: it actually works. This isn't some lofty theory about how people should behave. It's a honest-to-goodness instruction manual for how people actually are. Here's what I'm promising you today. By the time we're done, you'll grasp the one fundamental principle for influencing others, an idea so elegantly simple yet so powerful that it can start transforming every relationship in your life, beginning with your very next conversation. You'll discover not just how to get along with people, but how to develop genuine confidence and real power in every interaction you have from this day forward. Let's kick things off with a rather eye-opening fact. The Carnegie Institute of Technology analyzed records from over 10,000 people and found something remarkable. Your success in any field depends only about 15% on your technical knowledge and expertise. Just 15%. The remaining 85%? It comes down to your personality and your skill in dealing with people. Let that sink in for a moment. We invest years mastering technical skills in school, mathematics, science, literature. But the one skill that determines 85% of our professional success, and, according to Giblin, 99% of our personal happiness, is our ability to navigate human relationships. And most of us, we're basically winging it. So where do we start? We start with the common thread running through all success and happiness: other people. And to truly understand other people, we need to grasp the most powerful force driving them. It's a word that usually sounds negative: egotism. But Giblin invites us to see it through fresh eyes. Don't think of it as smugness or vanity. Picture it as a spark of the divine planted in every single person. It's the profound, unshakable hunger in every human heart to feel significant, to be respected, and to have our unique value recognized by others. In this sense, we're all egotists. We're all more fascinated by ourselves than by anything else in the universe. And every person you encounter, from the office cleaner to the company president, is silently yearning for approval from others so they can approve of themselves. This craving for self-worth is as real and as intense as physical hunger. And this brings us to one of the book's most crucial insights. A starved ego is a mean ego. Think about a dog for a second. A well-fed, content dog is friendly and playful. Its tail never stops wagging. But starve that same dog, and it becomes aggressive, irritable, ready to snap at anything. People work exactly the same way. That difficult person who's always arguing, criticizing, or making everything about themselves isn't suffering from an oversized ego. They're suffering from an undernourished one. They're desperately hungry for a sense of importance, and their obnoxious behavior is just a clumsy, desperate attempt to get the validation they're starving for. The person constantly bragging about their accomplishments is really trying to convince themselves they matter. The bully making you feel small does it because they feel microscopic inside. This insight gives us a completely new way to view difficult people. It gives us a memorable shorthand, LS/MFT. Low self-esteem means friction and trouble. Once you understand this, you stop seeing difficult people as opponents to defeat. You see them as starving people who need nourishment. And suddenly, the path to genuine confidence and power becomes crystal clear. It's not about winning debates. It's not about dominating conversations. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. The single most important secret for dealing with people is this: help the other person like themselves better. Feed their hungry ego. Satisfy their craving for significance. And, just like that starving dog who's finally been fed, they'll stop snarling and become your ally. This one principle is the master key, unlocking every other strategy in the book. Everything else simply puts this core truth into practice. So how exactly do we do it? How do we feed this universal hunger? Giblin reveals that you're already sitting on a fortune in human relations currency. You possess 3 powerful assets in unlimited supply, and the moment you start distributing them freely, people will gravitate towards you almost magnetically. He calls it the AAA formula for attracting people. The first, A, is acceptance. We all carry this deep longing to be accepted exactly as we are, imperfections included. We want to spend time with people around whom we can relax, be ourselves, let our guard down, without fear of judgment. The person who's constantly criticizing and finding fault will never lack for empty seats nearby, because they force everyone around them to stay defensive. Acceptance is a remarkable gift when you give someone permission to be themselves without demanding they measure up to your expectations. Something magical happens. You actually empower them to change. Think about it. Nagging and criticism just make people defensive. They dig in deeper to protect their bruised ego. But when a wife, for instance, genuinely accepts her husband as he is and believes in his potential despite his shortcomings, he experiences a surge of confidence. He thinks, if she has that much faith in me, maybe I really can improve. Her acceptance becomes the foundation for his growth. This isn't about abandoning your standards. It's about affirming the other person's fundamental worth as a human being, separate from their mistakes. The second A is approval. Approval takes things one step beyond acceptance. Acceptance means overlooking the negative. Approval means actively spotting something positive and highlighting it. You can always discover something worth approving in another person, just as you can always find something to criticize. It all depends on what you're searching for. When you express approval, you draw out the best in people. They soak up the warmth of your approval like sunshine, and that positive feeling motivates them to develop even more qualities you can celebrate. Giblin shares the story of a child psychologist assigned an impossible boy. The kid was moody, uncontrollable, and his own father insisted he didn't have a single redeeming quality. The psychologist started searching for just one tiny thing he could approve of. He discovered it. The boy was gifted at carving, though he'd only ever been punished for carving up the furniture at home. The psychologist bought him a proper carving set and praised his talent, telling him he was one of the finest young carvers he'd ever encountered. Soon, the psychologist found other things to approve of. One day, everyone was shocked when the boy cleaned his room without being asked. When the psychologist asked what prompted this, the boy simply replied, "I thought you would like that." He'd gotten a taste of approval, and he craved more. The third and final A is appreciation. The word appreciate literally means to increase in value. Its opposite is depreciate, which means to decrease in value. People naturally gravitate toward those who increase their value and avoid those who diminish it. Think about how valuable the people in your life truly are, your family, your friends, your colleagues. Then find small, specific ways to show them you recognize their worth. One of the most common complaints in marriages is simply not being noticed. A husband doesn't comment on his wife's new haircut, and what she hears is, "You're not important enough for me to really pay attention." One of the most appreciating things you can do is give someone the routine treatment. We all hunger to feel special, to be treated as a unique individual. When a server uses your name, or a store clerk says, "We don't usually do this, but for you, I'll make an exception," you practically glow. You've been appreciated. So there's your formula: acceptance, approval, and appreciation. These are the three essential nutrients that feed the human ego. Distribute them generously, and people will be drawn to you naturally. Now this brings us to an even more profound realization. What if I told you that you don't just influence how people behave towards you, you actually control it? Giblin introduces us to a psychological law as reliable as a mirror. In your interactions with people, you'll almost always see your own attitude reflected back at you. If you approach someone with hostility, with mental fists clenched, you're setting the stage for them to respond with hostility. They're simply matching the energy you created. If you smile, the person in the mirror smiles back. If you yell, they yell back. This isn't just armchair philosophy. It's been scientifically validated. Researchers at Kenyon College conducted experiments for the U.S. Navy and discovered something fascinating. When someone is shouted at, they literally cannot help but shout back, even over an intercom where they can't see the speaker. When the speaker's voice was gentle, the response was gentle. When it was loud, the response was loud. The person receiving the message was essentially forced to mirror the tone of the speaker. This gives you an incredible tool for diffusing anger in others. You know that a gentle answer deflates rage. If you find yourself in a heated situation, deliberately soften your own voice. Keep it calm and measured. This will literally force the other person to lower their voice. And it's nearly impossible for someone to sustain real anger while speaking softly. You can extinguish an explosion before it even ignites. This mirror principle applies to every emotion. Enthusiasm spreads faster than wildfire. If you want others excited about your ideas, you must first be genuinely enthusiastic yourself. Confidence breeds confidence. All the great leaders throughout history grasped this. Conrad Hilton, the hotel magnate, started building his first $1 million hotel with almost no capital. He simply carried himself with such absolute confidence that failure seemed impossible. And that very confidence inspired others to invest their money in his vision. You see, other people form their opinion of you largely from the opinion you project of yourself. If you act like you're nobody special, the world will accept your self-assessment. If you carry yourself like someone who matters, not with arrogance, but with quiet, steady confidence, the world has no choice but to treat you accordingly. And this principle hands us another powerful tool: the best way to help people improve. Scolding, shaming, or threatening someone for a mistake only damages their self-esteem and triggers defensiveness. It confirms that you have a low opinion of them, and they'll sink to meet that expectation. But as Winston Churchill once observed, I have found that the best way to get another to acquire a virtue is to impute it to him. Let someone know that you believe they're honest, and they'll strive to prove your faith justified. Let them know you trust them, and they'll work hard to be trustworthy. Giblin tells a wonderful story about a Louisiana banker who made hundreds of loans to struggling students with no collateral, not even a parent's signature. He simply made it clear that he was lending them the money for one reason: because he had complete faith they would repay it. And over 15 years he didn't lose a single dollar. You draw out in people the very qualities you expect to discover. Now that we understand these deep principles of human nature, how do we apply them in everyday conversations? Giblin offers two master skills: the art of speaking and the white magic of listening. When it comes to speaking, most of us are paralyzed by a simple fear: the fear of being boring. We think we need to say something brilliant or witty to start a conversation, so we freeze and say nothing at all. Giblin's advice is to relax and abandon the quest for perfection. Even the most engaging conversations begin with simple, unremarkable small talk, especially at the start. This is the necessary warm-up period. The easiest way to break the ice is to get the other person talking about the one subject where they're the world's leading expert, themselves. Where are you from? What kind of work do you do? Simple questions like these aren't boring at all. They're invitations. They demonstrate you're genuinely interested in them. And this brings us to a powerful conversational technique. Give your conversation a U-turn. Most of us speak in terms of I and me. I think this. Let me tell you about my vacation. The word I is a conversational stop sign, but you is a green light. When you frame the conversation around the other person, what's your take on that? How did you pull that off? You get them to open up, and they'll consider you one of the most captivating conversationalists they've ever encountered. Of course, the other half of conversation is listening, and this, Giblin argues, is where the real magic unfolds. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes once called it white magic. He said that the ability to listen in a sympathetic and understanding way is perhaps the most effective tool in the world for building relationships and securing lasting friendship. Why is listening so powerful? First, it's the highest compliment you can pay someone. By listening intently, you're silently communicating. What you have to say matters. You matter. This feeds their ego directly. When you interrupt or dismiss them, you're essentially telling them they're worthless. Second, listening is your personal radar system. If you simply listen, people will tell you everything you need to know. They'll reveal what they want, what worries them, what their needs are. Most of us are so busy broadcasting our own message that we never turn on our receiver. And third, listening helps you overcome self-consciousness. When all your attention is focused outward on what the other person is saying, you can't simultaneously worry about yourself. You escape your own head and genuinely connect. Finally, let's bring all these ideas together and see how they work in some of the trickiest situations, when we need to praise, criticize, or persuade someone. Praise, Giblin tells us, is a miracle power. It literally releases energy. He cites scientific studies showing that when school children received praise, their physical energy measurably increased. In a nationwide survey, the number one thing workers wanted most from their jobs wasn't higher pay or better conditions. It was genuine appreciation for their work. But praise comes with two critical rules. First, it must be sincere. Fake flattery gets spotted a mile away. Second, and this is advanced technique, praise the specific act or quality, not just the person in general. If you simply say you're wonderful, it can feel vague and even uncomfortable. But if you say, the way you handled that upset customer was absolutely brilliant, you're praising a concrete action. This gives the person a specific reason to feel valued, and it creates a powerful incentive for them to repeat that behavior. But what about when things go wrong? How do you criticize without crushing someone? First, you need to shift your mindset. Criticism shouldn't be about venting your frustration or feeding your own ego. It should be a course correction. Think of an air traffic controller guiding a pilot safely to the runway. The controller's feedback is impersonal, private, and focused on one objective: everyone landing safely. Giblin gives us 7 essential rules for effective criticism. The most important are: first, criticize in absolute privacy. Public criticism is public humiliation. Second, begin with a kind word or compliment. This shows you're not attacking their worth as a person. Third, criticize the action, not the person. Don't say, you're a terrible typist. Say, this word here is misspelled. You're correcting an error, not condemning a human being. Fourth, provide the solution. Don't just point out what's wrong, show them what's right. And fifth, end on a friendly note. Finish with encouragement, not another blow. And finally, how do we win arguments and persuade others to see things our way? The secret is recognizing that your goal isn't to win the argument at all. It's to help the other person change their own mind. You cannot accomplish this by attacking them directly. Their ego will rise up like a fortress wall and block your ideas from ever entering. You need to slip your ideas past that guard. Here are a few of Giblin's tested strategies. First, let the other person state their entire case without interruption. Second, pause for a moment before responding. This simple act demonstrates that you've respected their opinion enough to actually consider it. Third, don't insist on winning completely. Concede something. Find areas where you can agree. And fourth, perhaps most cleverly, let the other person save face. Never back someone into a corner where their only option is to admit they were completely wrong. Give them an escape route. You might say, of course, I understand why you'd think that not having seen this new information. Or, I felt exactly the same way initially, until I stumbled across this one fact that completely changed the picture. You provide a way out that allows them to change their position without sacrificing their dignity. And when you preserve their dignity, you win their cooperation. As we wrap up our exploration of this wonderfully practical book, it's worth pausing to consider why its message feels even more urgent today than when it was written over half a century ago. We inhabit a world that's more connected than ever, yet we often feel more isolated. We communicate through screens, where it's dangerously easy to forget that on the other side is a living, breathing person with that same fundamental need to feel valued. The most transformative lesson in this book, for me, is the radical reframing of the human ego. We're taught to view the ego as something to suppress, as the root of arrogance and selfishness. Giblin invites us to see it differently, not as an enemy, but as a legitimate and profound hunger. When you grasp that every person is walking around with this fundamental craving for importance, everything about human interaction suddenly makes sense. You stop taking things so personally. The sharp comment, the dismissive gesture, the difficult negotiation. You begin to see them not as personal attacks, but as awkward attempts to get ego nourishment from the other person. This perspective shift alone is transformative. The second powerful concept is the mirror principle. The idea that you're the architect of your own interactions is incredibly empowering. It shifts you from being a victim of circumstance, why is everyone always so difficult with me, to being a creator. It reveals that if you want a different reflection, you must first change what you're projecting. If you want enthusiasm, bring enthusiasm. If you want trust, offer trust. If you want warmth, radiate warmth. You have far more influence over your social world than you realize. And finally, the book's philosophy rests on a beautiful and timeless paradox. The most effective way to get what you want from people is to focus on giving them what they want. Offering acceptance, approval, appreciation, and your undivided attention doesn't diminish you. It doesn't weaken your position. It multiplies your influence, deepens your relationships, and enriches your own life in the process. So how can you start applying this wisdom today? Here are 3 simple actions you can take immediately. First, try the 5 compliment challenge. For the next 24 hours, make it your mission to deliver 5 genuine compliments. But remember the rule. Praise the specific action, not just the person in general. Don't just say, "You're a great friend." Say, "I really appreciated how you listened to me yesterday when I was struggling. That meant a lot." Watch how people respond. Second, practice the pause. In your very next conversation, especially if it involves disagreement, make a conscious effort to pause for 2 full seconds before responding. Don't just wait for your turn to speak. Truly listen. Notice how that small space transforms the entire energy of the conversation. It tells the other person they've genuinely been heard. And third, ask for an opinion. The next time you need help with something, don't just ask for assistance. Use Giblin's magic formula. I could really use your perspective on this. What do you think? By requesting their ideas, not just their labor, you make them a collaborator. You feed their need for significance and unlock a level of cooperation you've never experienced before. These aren't just clever tricks. They're a way of moving through the world with deeper empathy, greater understanding, and more grace. They're tools for building bridges instead of walls, and for transforming every human interaction into an opportunity for genuine connection. That was our journey through How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People by Les Giblin. We've uncovered some powerful truths today, but a summary is like studying a map of a beautiful country. The real adventure, the real discovery, happens when you actually walk the land yourself. If any of these ideas resonated with you, I genuinely encourage you to pick up the book. Reading it is an experience, and the stories and nuances within can truly transform how you connect with every person you meet. You can find a link in the description below. And if you've enjoyed exploring these ideas with me, please show your support by liking this summary and subscribing to Billionaire's Bookshelf. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another book that can change your life. Let's keep learning and growing together.